Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I've had a lot of people ask me again about rest times, and I guess people haven't been watching some of my specific series with my training because we're seeing me throw in a lot of training footage in my normal voiceovers and videos here. And I guess I should go ahead and clarify that, and let's get into an in-depth discussion about rest times. Now, I'm going to talk about rest times in body composition because that seems to be what more people care about. People wouldn't be asking that if they only cared about strength. Meaning, if your goal was to get as strong as humanly possible as the primary goal, with something like hypertrophy being the second, obviously really long rest times make sense. Every scientist, every exercise scientist, everyone else agrees on that. The only exception might be things like dynamic effort work. But when you're lifting really heavy, obviously long rest times are the best way to get strong because you can put more weight on the bar for subsequent sets, right? You can continue to lift heavier. That's a no-brainer. Now, a lot of guys get caught up in this. Well, what about for hypertrophy? And this is where it gets interesting. I'm going to give you guys the short answer. Take as long as you need. Take as long as you need to replicate your set. In other words, if you come in and you do 200 pounds for 5 reps or 8 reps or whatever it is, if you take such a short break that you can't replicate that again, that's too short of a break. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Here's where it gets interesting because we're going to count even some hypertrophy work as heavy. I mean, if you're pushing an 8 or a 10 rep set to about as hard as you can, that's still a relatively heavy weight. Anyone going to disagree with that relative to you? I mean, 10 reps set to pretty much failure on a big barbell movement still probably going to be a heavy weight for you. It's going to be somewhere in the range of 70% of your max. So the same thing holds here. And a lot of people say, well, all this various personal training courses and really accredited organizations are saying things like 1 to 2 minutes for hypertrophy. Right, and that's old schools of thinking. What I've been telling people lately, it's kind of like, here's the problem. You got guys like Dr. Brad Schoenfeld who specializes in muscle hypertrophy. That is his whole PhD in it. The guy has conducted dozens of studies on it, gets lots of grant money. He's obsessed with Gains, Dr. Gains. He's probably one of the leading experts on stimulating muscle growth, if not the leading expert in the world. And he does do his own bodybuilding and stuff. He's into that. That's his obsession. And he's done studies on this, and he's found that to not be true. What he has found is that longer breaks, 3 minutes plus, produce more hypertrophy if they allow you to use more weight. All right, and he's done several studies now. You guys should be able to find this. Just look up things like Dr. Brad Schoenfeld rest times. You're going to find studies. You're going to find abstracts. You're going to see discussion by various scientists about his work and even coaches. And here's what he's found. If a longer break allows you to use more weight for the same number of reps, it seems to produce slightly more hypertrophy. In other words, what I just said earlier, a lot of people are like, well, I could do the 200 pounds with only 1 minute and I can get 8 reps. Okay. His research shows that if you started instead of 200 pounds, if you're strong enough to do 210 on your first set, because a lot of people, if you can do only 1 minute between and still replicate the set, you're probably capable of a lot more. You're capable of putting more weight on the bar. So in other words, you should probably be doing 210 and resting 3 minutes. And that's the difference. That's what he found in his data, that over the course of the long term, we're not talking about short-term metabolites. Oh, their blood work looked like this after the workout. We're talking about when we actually measure muscle gains at like 8 weeks of training. People who lifted slightly heavier for the same number of reps, but took longer breaks to allow themselves to lift a little heavier, what happened? They gained more muscle. It's not a world's difference. It's not world's difference, but it is a bit more. Now, some people are going to be like, well, this pro bodybuilder, whatever does, and he does only 60-second rests and he's massive. It's like he's also a genetic freak and probably using $3,000 worth of drugs every month. You understand the difference? At a certain point, it's like some people have said over the years, even coaches, look, some pro bodybuilders are on enough drugs that if they did nothing but jumping jacks, they would be way, way bigger than the average guy in the gym. Okay? Jumping jacks alone would be enough to stimulate enough muscle growth on these guys to where they would probably be considerably bigger than you if that's all they did. So if they did that, would we be recommending doing jumping jacks? And I know that's hyperbole, but you need to think about that for a moment. When we have studies on people not on drugs and we show something usually produces 5 or 10% more muscle in a drug-free guy, and someone who uses mind-boggling amounts of drugs and is probably very genetically gifted seems to get away with the other one, that doesn't mean that that's the best way to train. This is why we study and say, okay, we look at an 8-week or a 10-week mark and see how much muscle these two groups gained. If one group clearly gains more and the study's replicated several times, there's your winner. That is probably going to produce slightly more muscle, at least over longer periods of time. You know, you might see the shorter break groups produce more anabolic metabolites in the short term. That doesn't ensure longer term muscle gains over the course of a couple months. That's the difference. So longer rest times usually equal more hypertrophy. Now here's the kicker. The problem becomes, how soon do you want to get out of the gym? How soon do you want to get out of the gym? If you're going to do 10 sets of exercises, 3 to 5 minute breaks are going to take you longer than 2-minute breaks. You're going to be at the gym longer. All right, that's on average a couple of minutes. That's an extra 20 minutes in your workout. And the question comes down to, is your time economy more important to you than stimulating ideal growth? And I can't answer that for you. That's a very, very personal question. You know, is a person willing to take an extra 15 minutes of breaks or 20 minutes of break time at the gym to get 5 or 10% more muscle growth? Because the questions we get into are not what produces the best gains. What are you willing to sacrifice? Now, back to the other point, some people will be like, well, you know, what about cardio? What about conditioning? What about fat loss? And here's the question I would ask you. Why are you lifting weights for fat loss? We should all be doing cardio every day. All right. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a recreational lifter. I don't care if you're a person training for your health. I don't care if you're a power lifter, a strong man, a bodybuilder. If you do not do daily cardio, I don't want to hear crap about your fitness or health, because you don't care about your health. All right. Anyone who doesn't do at least low intensity cardio 7 days a week probably doesn't really care that much about their health. If you care about your health, and this is a fitness channel, you're going to do cardio every day. In light of that, do you really think slightly shorter rest times in the gym is going to produce anywhere near the fat burning and conditioning that 30 minutes of cardio every day will? Not even close. It's not even in the ballpark. And here's the question. Why are you using your weights to burn fat? Your weight training, even if all you care about is body composition, weight training is there to build muscle and improve body composition. Your diet, your cardio, all of that should really be where you're concerned with your fat loss. And at the end of the day, you're wasting potential muscle growth if you're chasing this sort of training purely for fat loss. All right, there's other conditioning work you can do that is far, far more efficient and doesn't interfere with your strength and hypertrophy training. All right, because if you're stimulating slightly less growth because you're trying to burn more fat with what you're doing in the weight room, but you're getting less muscle growth stimulation for it. If you are cutting, you're going to hold on to muscle less effectively. That which builds muscle preserves muscle when you are losing body fat and trying to cut or losing weight. All right, that's a very simple concept, but it works and it's true. All right, you should be seeking to build muscle within your recovery limits, because your maximum recoverable volume will go down when you are eating less. All right, but you work within the confines of that. You work within the parameters which you have set. You're going to be better off in terms of body composition if you actually focus on a training style that produces better gains when you're actually cutting. And at the end of the day, also, more muscle mass usually equals better body composition. So your weight training should be focused around muscle improvement, body composition, things like that. If you want better conditioning and better fat loss, that's where everything from list cardio to GBP work comes in. You know what? You want to increase your burn afterwards. You want to get some benefits from some sort of resistance. Do some sled drags. Do some farmer's walks. All right, barbell complexes. Do general physical preparedness. That is going to burn through a hell of a lot more calories, and that's going to give you further carryover in conditioning and benefits, and then lifting a little lighter with shorter breaks is ever going to do. general physical preparedness, and then your low intensity cardio on top of that. All right, there's your combination. There's your keys to really pursuing body composition, not shorter rest times on your big movements and what you're doing in the gym. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.